Hello, and welcome to Choose Your Crown Part 10, where we exit Eden and enter Antediluvia. This is a supernatural journey through creation, out of the garden, and into eternity. In our previous video, we discussed how Torah and comparative mythology unlock a hidden history, and we are going to proceed and continue with that. In Part 9, as well as throughout the series, we have covered the infamous rebellion in heaven that led to part of the assembly of Yahuwah siding with the corrupt high priest and being brought low. Remember, Yahuwah is and has always been above every other Elohim, or God, in terms of position and authority. The sin is when another Elohim equates themselves to him or tries to elevate themselves above him, like Hasatan had done. Now that we have thoroughly covered Hasatan's fall as well as Adam and Eve's fall, there are some other fallen ones to look into. So, we will be looking at an expanded biblical history of the post-Eden, pre-flood world. And just so you can put this into perspective, we have the events to world flood in comparative mythology timeline. There's kind of like a before time scene where there's the rebellion in heaven, the primeval chaos of the deep before creation, the formation of earth and mankind. That's all kind of like before time. And then we have the ancient serpent of deception in time. That's kind of when our timeline as we know it kind of kicked in with the Ouroboros and the redemption plan. And then following that, this is what this video will be about, is the earth was filled with giants and violence, which led to the flood and preservative ark to cleanse the earth. But first, we have to start with Cain and Abel, because they immediately followed the story of Adam and Eve, and they're part of it. So Cain, his name in Hebrew, if you break down the lettering, basically means the sun on the horizon working seed, and the sun as in like the sunshine. And Abel, his name when you break it down is the leader of the house that's staffed. And he staffed sheep, so their names kind of correlate to what they did. Cain worked seed under the sun, and Abel staffed sheep. And as we learned from the previous videos, Hava, or Eve, was the separating point of the righteous and sinful seed lines. This is not to say that the righteous lines were sinless, though, only that they regarded Yahuwah's ways more. Cain and Abel shared the same land and fields to yield their crops and flocks. Cain was a tiller of the ground, and Abel was a keeper of sheep. As many of us know, Abel's offering to Yahuwah was accepted while Cain's was not, and that Cain grew jealous of Abel to the point of slaying him. The book of Yasher, or Jasher, says that it was an approximating offering. This gives the suggestion that it had to deal with getting close to something. It could have possibly been that they were offering at the entrance of the garden because their parents had lost access to it. The book of Yasher also says that Abel brought the firstlings of his flock and the fat of them, while Cain brought the inferior of his fruit, and that is why Yahuwah did not accept Cain's offering. It always comes back to giving Yahuwah the best of our fruits, just as we talked about fruits and the fruits of the Spirit and the fruits of the flesh in the past videos. Our fruits are how we can even tell if someone is filled with Yahuwah's set-apart spirit or not. And as we all know, Yahweh warned Cain, saying, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." And so, if we compare the Garden of Eden and the surrounding land of Eden to the tabernacle of Moshe, we see that it parallels a lot. We see that east of Eden is the land of Nod, or what would be considered outside of the entire sanctuary, and that sin was lying at the door, and that the bronze altar would have equated to the altar of Cain and Abel at that time. And it's possible that they were doing their approximating offering in order to gain access back to the garden. But instead, Cain murdered his brother, and he was made to go east of Eden into the land of Nod, outside of the sanctuary. And so I will summarize chapter 1 of Yasher, which also compares to the Genesis account of of Cain and Abel. Cain did not rule over the desire for sin in his own heart. Rather, he approached Abel in anger, asking why Abel's flocks feed where Cain tills. Abel asked in reply why Cain uses his flocks for food and clothing, making the point that it is only fair that his flocks eat his produce if Cain gets the payment of being able to utilize the flocks. Abel also made the point that if Abel wants him to go to another land, that he should pay him back for all the meat and wool that he should pay him back for all the meat and wool, and that he will go. Cain then said, "If I slay you this day, who will require thy blood from me?" And Abel answered, "Surely Elohim will avenge my cause, and he will require my blood from you should you slay me. For Yahweh is the judge and arbiter, and it is he who will requite man according to his evil, and the wicked man according to the wickedness that he may do upon the earth. And now, if you should slay me here, surely Elohim knows your secret views, and will judge you for the evil which you have declared to me this day." Cain then was enraged by Abel saying all of this, and slew Abel with a plow. Cain then cried at what he had done and buried Abel. Soon after, Yahweh asked Cain what he had done, and this is when he said the line, "I do not know, am I my brother's keeper?" Abel's blood cried out to Yahweh from the ground, and because of this bloodshed to the ground would no longer produce any food for Cain when he would till it, and that he had to become a wanderer outside the entirety of Eden to the land of Nod. Cain then took his wife, which was his sister, and when he could finally rest from his wandering, they had a son called Enoch, which was Cain's Enoch. There's two Enochs. And where they settled was set to become the first city. So basically, Cain did not rule over the desire of sin, which was caused by jealousy from a lack of his own putting forth of good fruit. And he would not listen to Abel being fair. And he got enraged when Abel said that Yahweh will be the judge if Cain were to slay him. And so Cain slayed him. And then he even lied to Yahweh and said he does not know where he is. And so Yahweh cursed him and sent him out to the land of Nod. And this is the only image that I found to be a good portrayal of an old plow. It's kind of hard to find a good image of an old or ancient plow that could have been used as a weapon. This is a pretty good image of what he probably used on his brother, which is very sad and brutal if you look at that plowing instrument. The land of Nod. The land of Nod is the land eastward outside of the land of Eden. Nod means to signal or sway in motion by lowering and raising. Nod is the land of wandering, beckoning, signaling, swaying, signing. A sign is conceived as passing through the intervening space to whom it is made because it signals between. This is the world that we live in now. It is a world full of signs, signals, and symbols. The world of deception where those who are of it make signs to signify what they wish to do. It is unlike any other area of Eden or the heavenly sanctuary where those who are there do things within the protected realm of Yahuwah. If you messed up in Eden or in the heavenly sanctuary, you got kicked out. But if you mess up in Nod, you are already there as a wanderer. Death came into existence when Adam and Eve took from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so the outcome for sinning is already set. It's death. You go to Sheol, you die. That is the outcome of sin. And in the meantime, you're in the land of Nod, basically, this world. During the first era, if you sin, you die before you get to the age of 1,000 years old, because to Yahuwah, 1,000 years is as a day, and he said they would die within the day of them eating the forbidden fruit. Now remember, he promised to Noah that humans can't live past 120 years old. That was when the change was made. But before that, humans could live no longer than 1,000 years due to sin. And then it got cut down to 120 years due to sin. Because death entered in through sin, the whole world was brought under the power of the evil one. Nod, being the realm of signaling, makes it a playground for those who take the path of unrighteousness, wickedness, and even magic. Nod also means to nod off to sleep. It is the land of those who are asleep to the ways of the Most High. And it even relates to amnesia. And I'm always comparing the earth to a womb. And even a womb has amniotic fluid, as though it is a place where we go to forget something. In this current life, you have to be born again in order to get past that nod or that amnesia, that sleep. And if you're not born again, you're stuck in the sleeping realm. You're stuck in the land of Nod. And Abel answered, saying, Surely Elohim will avenge my cause, and he will require my blood from you should you slay me. For Yahuwah is the judge and arbiter, and it is he who will requite man according to his evil, and the wicked man according to the wickedness that he may do upon earth. And now, if you should slay me here, surely Elohim knows your secret views, and will judge you for the evil, which you have declared to me this day. And when you look at the word requite, it means to make return for, something done or felt, in a similar or appropriate fashion. To avenge for wrongdoing, to respond to, or do something to or for another in return for that person's action or emotion. So ultimately, all of our actions, including Cain's, are requited by Yahuwah because that is his job as the judge and creator. And Abel knew this, and that is why he told Cain that Yahweh will avenge his cause, because that is Yahweh's job. And that leads to the marking of Cain. "What have you done?" replied Yahweh. "The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed and banished from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield its produce to you. You will be a fugitive and wanderer on the earth." But Cain said to Yahweh, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, this day you have driven me from the face of the earth, and from your face I will be hidden. I will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." "Not so," replied Yahweh. "If anyone slays Cain, then Cain will be avenged sevenfold." And Yahweh placed a mark on Cain, so that no one who found him would kill him. So Cain went out from the presence of Yahweh and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So there's so many different theories on the mark of Cain. But I'm kind of going based off of what the book of Yahusha is saying here, based on that requite term, based on what Abel had said to him. On Yahweh is the ultimate judge and arbiter, and he requites causes. So what I believe is that Cain was not necessarily marked for protection like some might extrapolate here. He wasn't being protected per se. He was marked so that only Yahweh would be the one who requites Abel's life from him, and not anyone else who finds him. There were either other people from when Elohim made male and female in general on day 6, or this is speaking of Cain and Seth's own other siblings and lineages over time. Lifespans were much longer at this time period, so some people think there were other people besides those who came from Adam and Eve. I'm not in that camp. I think that all of mankind stems from Adam and Eve, and that there were not others except for everyone who they bore themselves. But some people don't think that because they use the day 6 idea that there were other male and females made. That it's fine. It's not really that big of an issue. The point ultimately is that Yahweh requites the causes, and sin did ultimately come in, and every human is affected by it. If anyone else were to have slain Cain directly without Yahweh being the overall judge, then Cain would have been avenged sevenfold. Is it possible that this could relate to the mark of the beast, where those with the mark will be directly dealt with by Yahweh being the judge, and not by any other, lest they be judged sevenfold? We're not sure. I'm just wondering if the mark of Cain has something to do with the mark of the beast, or if it's unrelated. Not sure. All I know is that it has to do with Yahweh being the direct judge. Yahusha chapter 2 summarized. Adam and Eve had Seth to bear another seedling in place of Abel. And as Seth grew up and had his first son, Enosh, mankind began to transgress and rebel against Elohim. Mankind began serving other Elohim and making images of brass and stone to bow down to them and to serve them and to forsake Yahweh. This made Yahweh increase in anger against mankind. Yahweh caused the river Gihon to flood over and destroy 1/3 of the earth, and a famine that followed to try to get mankind to turn from their evil ways. Men continued to sin and transgress before Yahweh and to corrupt the earth, which would only bear for them thorns and thistles. Enosh's son Canaan ruled over mankind at that time and was full of wisdom, and Canaan knew that Elohim was planning to destroy their whole world with a flood in a time to come. Mankind proceeded to corrupt their ways and even made potions to render women barren and retain their youth. Canaan, who was Seth's grandson, had 2 daughters. They were Adah and Zillah, who married into Cain's lineage through Cain's great-grandson Lamech. Zillah bore Tubal-Cain to Lamech, and when Lamech was old and hard of vision. One day Lamech and his son Tubal-Cain were drawing bows and arrows, and Lamech had Tubal-Cain slay what he thought was an animal in the woods. When they approached it, it turned out to be Cain, and not an animal that they slew. And Yahweh requited Cain's evil according to his wickedness, which he had done to his brother Abel, according to the word of Yahweh which he had spoken. Lamech was so grieved at slaying his grandfather that he struck his own son Tubal-Cain and killed him as well in the heat of the moment. Lamech's wives Adah and Zillah had a hard time hearing what had happened, and mankind increased even more in their wickedness in those days. Yahweh's anger grew, and as the time for the flood approached nearer, Seth's lineage were trying to stay in line with Yahweh's wisdom and righteousness. Okay, so in Yahusha chapter 2, Cain's evil was finally dealt with directly by Yahweh through the means of Lamech, his own great-grandson. And it was when his own great-grandson was old and hard of seeing that he thought Cain was an animal and had Tubal-Cain strike him with a bow and arrow, which kind of perfectly matched up with how he took out Abel. Even though it was not a plow, it was still an instrument that took him out. So he got taken out by an arrow, and he took Abel out with a plow. So, and that also kind of explains there's a weird passage in Genesis where it talks about Lamech's wives talking with him, and we don't have the full context of it, but we get it in the book of Yahusha. Oh, and also, I wanted to point out that Yahweh gave a warning flood, basically, to destroy 1/3 of the earth, and a famine that followed way, way before he even sent the whole earth flood. So, yeah, that's interesting that there was already a 1/3 of the earth flood prior to a whole earth flood. And here we have a pre-flood family tree, and where I have them in red, like a maroon color, it's the Melchizedek line, and you have to watch my previous videos to understand the Melchizedek. But yeah, in that purple, maroon, red color is the Melchizedek line. It just basically means the righteous line, the righteous kingly line that does ultimately lead up to Yahusha way, way later. So we have Adam, and he married Hava, and then Adam and Hava had Abel, Cain, Cain's wife, who was his sister, They had Seth. They had Seth's wife, who was his sister, and they also had a third daughter, and we don't know who she ended up with. And if we come on back over to Cain and his wife, they had their son Enoch, and their Enoch had Irad, and Irad had Methujael, and Methujael had Methushael, and Methushael eventually had Lamech. Now, Cain and Cain's wife and their lines, they could have had more sons and daughters, but these are the sons and daughters who were pertinent to the story. So Cain and his wife could have had more than just Enoch. Enoch could have had more than just Irad, and so on and so forth. And they themselves could have started branching off and having their own children and their own family trees. And that's why I think that these are the only people at the time, and that there weren't others. Because if these ones, if Adam and Eve had 5 surviving children, and they were able to pair up and start having children, and their children started to pair up and start having children, then eventually you are going to have enough people, especially if they're having 6 or more children at a time in a lifetime. But anyway, and they lived a lot longer, so they kind of were able to do that. They could have been having way more than 6 children in a lifetime and filling the earth. But anyway, Cain's eventual great-grandson Lamech had Jubal, Tubal-Cain, and Nama, because he married Ada and Zillah from Seth's line. And Lamech accidentally hunted and killed Cain, and then in grief accidentally struck his own son Tubal-Cain, and he had to hearken to his 2 wives about his accidents to keep them from leaving him. And then, because they kind of knew the world was their world as they knew it was ending anyway, so they decided to stay with Lamech. So we'll come on over to Seth's side. He got with his sister, and she became his wife. And they had Enosh, who had Canaan, who then had Ada and Zillah and Mahalalel. And Zillah married into Cain's side and had Nama from Lamech. And Mahalalel from Canaan's side had Jared, who had the good Enoch, the righteous Enoch, who then had Methuselah, who then had their own Lamech, who then had Noah, and then Noah married Nama from the other Lamech, and they had Japheth, Ham, and Shem. And in the days of Jared, wicked practices and corruption abounded on the earth, and the hybridization of creatures took place. So in the days of Jared, things started to get really not okay. And that's what sparked the need for a flood. And this is also interesting. If you line up the sons from Cain and Seth, we get a very strange lineup of maybe what you could say is like righteous versus wicked, like doppelgangers. Like Cain kind of lines up with Canaan in terms of name. Enoch to Enoch in terms of name. Irad to Jared in terms of name. Methujael to Methulalel. Methushael to Methuselah. And it's almost like, yeah, there's the wicked side, and then Seth's side. And it's even interesting how the names cross in the middle, almost like they're kind of like almost like they do cross over. I don't know. It's really weird how it works. But I'm pretty sure it's kind of like showing like a dark side tree and a light side tree. And we'll see how that keeps on becoming true as time goes. The days of Jared and Enoch. In the days of Seth's first son, Enosh, mankind first began to make idols and serve the first wave of fallen angels. But as the days quickly approached, the predestined time of the flood to deal with the corruption of mankind, things got even worse. When it came down to the days of Jared and his son, the righteous Enoch, the concept of the land of Nod being wicked reached its limit. In Genesis chapters 5 and 6, we gained some clues as to what was going on. But the depth of the situation was salvaged in apocryphal texts such as the Ethiopian Enoch, saved by the Ethiopian Church when the Catholic Church considered it heretical, and the Book of Yahusha. Genesis chapter 5 verses 21 through 24 says, When Enoch had lived 65 years, he fathered Methuselah. Enoch walked with Elohim after he fathered Methuselah 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with Elohim, and he was not found, for Elohim had took him. And I think the Septuagint says he translated him. This is because Elohim did take Enoch up to write to his son Methuselah about all that had happened and about all that was to come in relation to the world flood, and even about the elect one, Yahusha. So yes, the righteous Enoch, he writes about what had happened prior to the flood, the coming of the flood, and he even writes about the whole lineages of the earth and what's prophesied about them, and he even talks about the elect one, which is Yahusha. Genesis chapter 6 in the Septuagint says, And it came to pass, when men began to be numerous upon the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of Elohim, having seen the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, took to themselves wives of all whom they chose. And Yahuwah Elohim said, My spirit shall certainly not remain among these men forever, because they are flesh. But their days shall be 120 years. Now the giants were upon the earth in those days, and after that, when the sons of Elohim were wont to go in to the daughters of men, they bore children to them. Those were the giants of old, the men of renown. And this is I'm pretty sure this is from the book of Enoch. So we have the introduction to the giants in Genesis, and now we can expound upon it by looking into what Enoch had to say. And this chapter is labeled Fallen Angels. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Samjaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then they sware they all together and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were in all 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon, because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And these are the names of their leaders: Samlazaz, their leader; Arachlaba, Ramiel, Kokabel, Tamlel, Ramlel, Danel, Azekel, Barakijal, Asael, Amaris, Batarel, Ananel, Zeklel, Samsapiel, Satarel, Turel, Jamjael, Sariel. These are their chiefs of tens. And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for themselves one. And they began to go into them, and to defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments, and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh, and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth, and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. Simjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings; Armoros, the resolving of enchantments; Barakijal taught astrology; Kokabel, the constellations; Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds; Arachiel, the signs of the earth; Shamshiel, the signs of the sun; and Sariel, the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. This chapter is called the Intercession of Angels. And then Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down from heaven and saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all lawlessness being wrought upon the earth. And they said to one another, The earth made without inhabitant cries; the voice of their cryings goes up to the gates of heaven. And now to you, the holy ones of heaven, the souls of men make their suit, saying, Bring our cause before the Most High. And they said to Yahuwah of the ages, Master of masters, God of gods, King of kings, and Elohim of the ages, the throne of thy glory standeth unto all the generations of the ages, and thy name holy and glorious and blessed unto all the ages. Thou hast made all these things, and power over all things hast thou, and all things are naked and open in thy sight, and thou seest all things, and nothing can hide itself from thee. Thou seest what Azazel has done, who hath taught all unrighteousness on the earth, and revealed the eternal secrets which were in heaven, which men were striving to learn, and Samlazaz, to whom thou hast given authority to bear rule over his associates. And they have gone to the daughters of men upon the earth, and have slept with women, and have defiled themselves, and revealed to them all kinds of sins. And the women have borne giants, and the whole earth has thereby been filled with blood and unrighteousness. And now, behold, the souls of those who have died are crying out, making their suit of the gates of heaven, and their lamentations have ascended and cannot cease because of the lawless deeds which are wrought on the earth. And thou knowest all things before they come to pass, and thou seest these things, and thou dost suffer them, And thou dost not say to us what we are to do to them in regard to these. Then said the Most High, the Holy and Great One, spake, and sent Uriel to the son of Lamech, and said to him, Go to Noah and tell him in my name, hide thyself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching, that the whole earth will be destroyed, and a deluge is about to come upon the whole earth, and will destroy all that is in it. And now instruct him that he may escape, and his seed may be preserved for all the generations of the world. And again, Yahweh said to Raphael, Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert which is in Dudiel, and cast him therein, and place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. And heal the earth which the angels have corrupted, and proclaim the healing of the earth, that they may heal the plague, and that all the children of men may not perish through all the secret things that the watchers have disclosed and have taught their sons. And the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin. And to Gabriel said Yahweh, Proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the children of fornication, and destroy the children of the watchers from amongst men. Send them one against the other, that they may destroy each other in battle. For length of days shall they not have, and no request that they make of thee shall be granted unto their fathers on their behalf, for they hope to live an eternal life, and that each one of them will live 500 years. And Yahweh said unto Michael, Go, bind Samlazaz and his associates, who have united themselves with women, so as to defile themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment and their consummation, till the judgment that is forever and is consummated. In those days they shall be led off to the abyss of fire, and to the torment and the prison in which they shall be confined forever. And whosoever shall be condemned and destroyed will from thenceforth be bound together with them to the end of all generations. And destroy all the spirits of the reprobate and the children of the watchers, because they have wronged all mankind. Destroy all wrong from the face of the earth, and let every evil work come to an end. And let the plant of righteousness and truth appear, and that shall prove a blessing. The works of righteousness and truth shall be planted in truth and joy forevermore. And then shall all the righteous escape, and shall live till they beget thousands of children. And all the days of their youth and their old age shall they complete in peace. And then shall the whole earth be tilled in righteousness, and shall all be planted with trees, and be full of blessing. And all desirable trees shall be planted on it, and they shall plant vines on it, and the vine which they plant thereon shall yield wine in abundance. And as for all the seed which is sown thereon, each measure shall bear 1,000, and each measure of olive shall yield 10 presses of oil. And cleanse thou the earth from all oppression, and from all unrighteousness, and from all sin, and from all godlessness, and all the uncleanness that is wrought upon the earth, destroy from off the earth. And the children of men shall become righteous, and all nations shall offer adoration and praise, and shall praise me, and all shall worship me. And the earth shall be cleansed from all defilement, and from all sin, and from all punishment, and from all torment. And I will never again send upon it from generation to generation forever. And in those days I will open the store chambers of blessing which are in the heaven, so as to send them down upon the earth, the work and labor of the children of men. And truth and peace shall be associated together throughout all the days of the world, and throughout all the generations of men. Before these things Enoch was hidden, and no one of the children of men knew where he was hidden, and where he abode, and what had become of him. And his activities had to do with the watchers, and his days were with the holy ones. And I, Enoch, was blessing Yahuwah of majesty, and the King of the ages, and lo, the watchers called me, Enoch the scribe, and said to me, Enoch, thou shalt scribe of righteousness. Go, declare to the watchers of the heaven, who have left the high heaven, the holy eternal place, and have defiled themselves with women, and have done as the children of earth do, and have taken unto themselves wives. Say to them, you have wrought great destruction on the earth, and ye shall have no peace nor forgiveness of sin. And inasmuch as they delight themselves in their children, the murder of their beloved ones shall they see, and over the destruction of their children shall they lament, and shall make supplication unto eternity, but mercy and peace shall ye not obtain. And Enoch went and said, Azazel, thou shalt have no peace. A severe sentence has gone forth against thee, to put thee in bonds, and thou shalt not have toleration nor request granted to thee, because of the unrighteousness which thou hast taught, and because of all the works of godlessness and unrighteousness and sin which thou hast shown to men. Then I went and spoke to them all together, and they were all afraid, and fear and trembling seized them. And they besought me to draw up a petition for them, that they might find forgiveness, and to read their petition in the presence of Yahuwah of heaven. For from them thenceforth they could not speak with him, nor lift up their eyes to heaven, for shame of their sins for which they had been condemned. Then I wrote out their petition, and the prayer in regard to their spirits and their deeds individually, and in regard to their request that they should have forgiveness in length. And I went off and sat down at the waters of Dan in the land of Dan, to the southwest of Hermon. I read their petition till I fell asleep. And behold, a dream came to me, a vision, and visions fell down upon me. And I saw visions of chastisement, and a voice came bidding to me to tell it to the sons of heaven and reprimand them. And when I awakened, I came unto them, and they were all sitting gathered together, weeping in Abel's jail, which is between Lebanon and Sinister, with their faces covered. And I recounted before them all the visions which I had seen in sleep, and I began to speak the words of righteousness, and to reprimand the heavenly watchers. This is the chapter, Book of the Words of Righteousness. The book of the words of righteousness and the reprimand of the eternal watchers, in accordance with the command of the Holy Great One, in that vision I saw in my sleep. What I will now say with a tongue of flesh, and with the breath of my mouth, what the Great One has given to men to converse therewith, and understand with the heart. As he has created and given to man the power of understanding the word of wisdom, so hath he created me also, and given me the power of reprimanding the watchers, the children of heaven. I wrote out your petition, and in my vision it appeared thus, that your petition will not be granted unto you throughout all the days of eternity, and that judgment has been finally passed upon you. Your petition will not be granted unto you, and from henceforth you shall not ascend into heaven unto all eternity. And in bonds of the earth that the decree has gone forth to bind you for all the days of the world. And previously you shall have seen the destruction of your beloved sons, and ye shall have no pleasure in them, but they shall fall before you by the sword. And your petition on their behalf shall not be granted, nor yet on your own, even though you weep and pray and speak all the words contained in the writing which I have written. And the vision was shown to me thus, Behold, in the vision, clouds invited me, and a mist summoned me, and the course of the stars and the lightning sped and hastened me. And the winds in the vision caused me to fly, and lifted me upward, and bore me into heaven. And I went in till I drew nigh to a wall which is built of crystals and surrounded by tongues of fire, and it began to affright me. And I went into the tongues of fire, and drew nigh to a large house which was built of crystals, and the walls of the house were like a tessellated floor made of crystals, and its groundwork was of crystal. Its ceiling was like the path of the stars and the lightnings, and between them was fiery cherubim, and their heaven was water. A flaming fire surrounded the walls, and its portals blazed with fire. And I entered into that house, and it was hot as fire and cold as ice. There was no delights of life therein. Fear covered me, and trembling got hold upon me. And as I quaked and trembled, I fell upon my face, and I beheld a vision, and lo, there was a second house greater than the former, and the entire portal stood open before me, and it was built of flames of fire. And in every respect it so excelled in splendor and magnificence and extent that I cannot describe to you its splendor and its extent. And its floor was fire, and above it were lightnings in the path of the stars, and its ceilings also was flaming fire. And I looked, and I saw therein a lofty throne. Its appearance was a crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun, and there was the vision of cherubim. And from underneath the throne came streams of flaming fire, so that I could not look thereon. And the great glory that sat thereon, and his raiment shone more brightly than the sun, and was whiter than any snow. None of the angels could enter, and could behold his face by reason of the magnificence and glory, and no flesh could behold him. The flaming fire was round about him, and a great fire stood before him, and none around could draw nigh him. 10,000 times 10,000 were before him, yet he need no counselor. And the most holy ones who were nigh to him did not leave by night nor depart from him. And until then I had been prostrate on my face, trembling. And Yahuwah called me with his own mouth, and said to me, Come hither, Enoch, and hear my word. And of the holy ones came to me and waked me, and he made me rise up and approach the door, and I bowed my face downwards. And he answered and said to me, and I heard his voice, Fear not, Enoch, thou righteous man and scribe of righteousness. Approach hither and hear my voice. And go, say to the watchers of heaven, who have sent thee to intercede for them, you should intercede for men, and not men for you. Wherefore have ye left the high, holy, and eternal heaven, and lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and taken to yourselves wives, and done like the children of earth, and begotten giants as your sons? And now, you were holy, spiritual, living the eternal life. You have defiled yourselves with the blood of women, and have begotten with the blood of flesh, and as the children of men have lusted after flesh and blood, as those also do who perish and die. Therefore have I given them wives also, so they might impregnate them, and beget children by men, and thus nothing might be wanting to them on the earth. But you were formerly spiritual, living the eternal life, and immortal for all generations of the world, and therefore I have not appointed wives for you. For as the spiritual ones of the heaven, in heaven is their dwelling. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men, and from watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on the earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. From the days of the slaughter and destruction and the death of the giants, from the souls of whose flesh the spirits having gone forth, shall destroy without incurring judgment. Thus shall they destroy until the day of consummation, the great judgment in which all the age shall be consumed. Over the watchers and the godless, yea, shall they be wholly consummated. And now, as to the watchers who have sent thee to intercede for them, who had been aforetime in heaven, say to them, you have been in heaven, but all the mysteries had not yet been revealed to you, and you knew worthless ones, and these, in the hardness of your hearts, you have made known to the women, and through these mysteries women and men work much evil on earth. Say to them, therefore, you have no peace. Okay, so that was, I think, 3 chapters from the book of Enoch that explain the origins of unclean spirits and how they are the disembodied spirits of the once giants who came from the mixing of human women and angels that were not supposed to leave their dwelling, but made a pact to leave their dwelling to sleep with human women. And Yahuwah strongly punished them, and they are punished for all of eternity. And in the meantime, the unclean spirits are bound to the earth until the day of judgment. So, that's a lot. Some people already kind of know this information, but some people that might be entirely brand new and entirely too much to take in. So if you need to take the time to take that in, go on ahead. I get it. But I have to continue with the rest of the teaching that connects to that. So that's part of what the antediluvian world was like, the pre-flood world. The punishment of the wicked angels was for them to watch their own offspring slaughter one another, and then for they themselves to be bound in the valleys and depths of the earth until the final judgment day. Legion, which is in Matthew 8:29, mentions to Yahusha not to torment them before the appointed time. The appointed time is the very end times judgment, which includes corrupted mankind, the fallen angels, and the wicked spirits. The flood or deluge was to cleanse the earth for the remaining time until the very end and to bring vegetation back. The offspring of the genetic mixing of mankind and angels made a hybridized, non-Yahuwah created soul. A mortal being reproducing with a non-mortal being produces an unclean, uncreated by Yahuwah spirit within it that cannot hold Yahuwah's own set-apart spirit, and genetics that are magical like giants. So when you have an angel that's unauthorized to reproduce, producing with something that is authorized to reproduce, you get what they end up with is a hybridized being that's almost magical, like a giant, but it has an unclean spirit because his set-apart spirit can't reside in it. And that is how an unclean spirit or demon is formed. Yahuwah did not create it. It's not created by him, and he's the creator. And so if he didn't create it, it's unclean. It was made outside of his set-apart instructions, which have everything to do with keeping our genetics and our generations pure. His instructions, his set-apart Torah, if even the angels don't keep it, things go wrong. And this even says in that 33rd verse that these angels, the ones that came down to produce with women, it says that when they were in heaven, they did have certain mysteries revealed to them, but it was the worthless mysteries. It wasn't even like the really good ones, right? Like the Melchizedek, or anything to do with like true, like higher level Torah. Like these angels, they just taught the worthless mysteries, and all that they did was defile the earth from that. So here's more on unclean spirits and demons. Okay, unclean spirits, also known as demons. So this is Greek. So a demon or evil spirit or unclean spirit, or the spirit of a Nephilim, a fallen one. It comes from Deo, which means to distribute fortunes, and Mon, which is to be of a supernatural spirit, sometimes of a bad nature. Mon can also be a devil or a monster, right? A Mon. Now, there's other things that like use the word Mon on the end, like Digimon. That used to be a show, and things like that. It's because they're like supernatural creatures. Now we don't have to say that everything's bad and everything's evil. Sometimes there's just ideas that bounce off of the fact that all these things happened. But anyway, Mon means a supernatural spirit of bad nature most of the time, or it can mean devil. And Deo, they distribute fortune, so that's what an unclean spirit is. It is magical, it is supernatural, but that does not make it good. And that's kind of what I'm wanting to hammer in about unclean spirits during this teaching and the next couple videos. Whenever I'm talking about these, just because they do have supernatural powers does not mean that they are good by any means. The offspring of the female humans and fallen angels were giant humanoid beings. They were the giants of old. Due to not being created by Yahuwah the Creator, they were unable to hold his set-apart spirit or even a categorizable soul, following like kind after like kind. The giants had horrible attributes and characteristics as described in many apocryphal writings and even all throughout hidden history and lore. They are often described as having had porcelain white skin, red hair, double wide mouths, 12 fingers and 12 toes, and great height. They were monstrous and would eat anything, including humans and large animals. I think it even said they ate each other. When Yahuwah had caused them to slay off one another, their unclean spirits were bound to the earth and are able to torment people. There were other Nephilim hybrids as well that also became unclean, tormenting spirits. Not only can they cause torment, but they also possess what is considered magical qualities, and so they can trick people into thinking they are good fun to have around, even though they are actually evil. They are master tricksters. They are literally where the concept of a clown comes from. Big, unproportional, scary, wide-mouthed, red-lipped, clumsy, tricky, trippy-colored, and scary. Now, we don't know exactly what the Nephilim giants looked like. We can have a lot of describing factors, but like I said, porcelain white skin, red hair, double wide mouths, 12 fingers and 12 toes, and great height. We don't know exactly how tall. Maybe they had varying heights. It's very hard to say, but they were giants. And so here are some examples. Attack on Titan. I have never seen it. I've just seen pictures and clips from it. But yeah, that looks scary and trippy. It has a double wide mouth, almost like a serpentine kind of opening, like a hinging mouth. It's a giant. It's going to eat somebody. I think the picture in the middle, I think that's a description from the Giant of Kandahar, which is a giant, I think, that was described to have been found and covered up in Afghanistan, because sometimes these things still are considered to be lingering on the earth. Not as plentiful as they used to be, thankfully. And then we have, I think this is called Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which is funny because they know exactly what they were trying to depict. They are saying, though, they're aliens, they look like clowns. Or do clowns look like them? Well, the answer is, it's both. And outer space is technically heaven. So yeah, the fallen angels came down, had offspring, and it produced what would be considered killer clowns from outer space, right? They're trippy, they're scary, they eat people, they're not nice, they do tricks. I've not ever watched that movie. I've only heard things about it. But yeah, it is where that origin comes from. More on unclean spirits and demons. The unclean spirits appear and behave like clowns. So it's not only that they look like them or resemble them, it's that they even behave like them. Not only because it's where the clown motif originated from through theater and Freemasonry, but it's because angels themselves are what we would consider trippy creatures. They are a lot of the time described as being, so angels themselves can be described as being bird or serpentine-like, or as a mix of human and animal attributes. And that is okay when it remains in heaven, but it is not at all okay when the angels that came down decided to mix with the human and animal gene pools. Right? So then you end up with reptilian wide mouths, fish tails, wings, feathers, horns, and other strange features found among Nephilim fairy tale creatures. They're the same. Nephilim, unclean spirits, and fairy tale creatures are all the same stuff. Same category of stuff. In fact, people used to refer to unclean spirits as fairies and fairy tale creatures. Many old fairy tale and folklore stories match the same phenomena as today's alien stories. And another term is cryptids. So fairy tale creatures, folklore creatures, aliens, cryptids, they're all the same thing. They are also many times considered elemental spirits or spirits of the woods. And I forgot to put that verse in here. I'll try to remember to put it in the next video. I'm going to paraphrase it right now, but there's a verse in the New Testament that talks about how um, the world um, something about elemental spirits and how the world uses them. I'll put it in the next video, or you can look it up. It says elemental spirits. I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but it's all of this stuff. They are also many times considered elemental spirits or spirits of the woods. Things going missing, showing up without explanation, objects moving, hurting people, wishes being granted, abductions and ethereal apparitions, impersonating of the dead, possession, oppression, hearing voices, etc. They are the same unclean spirits, just with different false narratives. They are not fairies, angels, saints, the dead, ancient ancestors, or aliens. They are unclean spirits of the Nephilim. So you can call them whatever you want. Some people say, oh, it's ghosts. Some people say, oh, it's aliens. Some people say it's fairies. Nope. It's unclean spirits of the Nephilim, guys. It's all the same stuff. They're demons. They are bound to the earth that we dwell on, just in a different layer or realm of it. This realm is often described as the Technicolor realm or the circus realm because it is made up of non-solid colors and abstract shapes. When people take certain drugs such as DMT, they get a glimpse into this unclean realm, and many will often say they encounter jester and trickster type entities like elves and goblins there. Yes, these things do exist, but that does not mean that it is in Yahuwah's will for us to have encounters or experiences with these unclean spirits. They will be judged on the last great day alongside all who they seduce. Yahuwah wants us to live a life free from them and full of his set-apart presence. So I have never done DMT or drugs or anything like that. I have one story that I will tell very shortly that I am not proud of, that it was actually the moment that I decided to never again, where I had an experience with marijuana, and I knew at the time um, a lot of this stuff, so when it happened, I'll tell the story after this, but when it happened, I was like, oh yeah, I will never mess with this stuff ever again, because I know better. And so I repented from that one, but I don't know what the DMT realm is like or anything, but some people have, and some people are still seduced by it, and it's sad. They think it's just an experience. They don't realize it's unclean spirits. But yeah, it is like a realm where it's apparently I haven't encountered it, but it's very abstract shapes, colors. It's trippy. There can be gestures there. Um, but yeah, they things that resemble clowns and elves and goblins, right? They're all Nephilim spirits. And here I have some examples. We have There's actually a few channels right now where they go over the Nephilim look like clowns, and I'm very glad I have subscribed to those channels and have been keeping up with them, because I don't know, it felt like it was a big missing puzzle piece to my own project. And then we have the jester in the abstract realm, which is essentially their prison. that Yahweh has them in, but it's still part of the earth. It's still earth. It's just they're overlapping place and boundary on earth. And then the It Clown, which is it turns out in that series, which I have never read, I've only seen parts of the movie. I'm not really into that type of stuff, but the It Clown isn't actually a clown. It's just an alien evil entity from a parallel world, I guess, that uses fear to feed itself. So a lot of people and children are afraid of clowns, so it took on the persona of a clown in order to lure children to it, I guess, but using fear. Okay, so here's some examples of unclean spirits. But first, yeah, I'll explain my experience with marijuana. So I'm 26 right now, and I think, how old was I? I was probably, I'm trying to think, I was probably 20, 19 or 20 when I had this experience, because I didn't have my daughter yet. My daughter's 5. So yeah, I was either 19 or 20. I was at a friend's place, and they at the time, not now, used to regularly have it, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll just have some since we're just hanging out. I have nothing to do anyway. I had nowhere to go, nothing to do, nowhere to be, so it was no big deal. And so I just had a little bit of it, and at at the time I was still into all this sort of stuff. I've been on an ongoing journey with the Bible and becoming saved and getting into these sort of deep topics. So at the time, my friend's uncle was living there at the place we were at, and he started talking about like the pyramids, and he was trying to talk about the antediluvian world, which is just kind of funny because it all ties into this, right? But we were all high, and I was still trying to, which was irritating to me, I was trying to stay composed and explain to everybody the antediluvian world and like this sort of stuff. I was trying to like stay in line and like just explain it like properly, and it started to bug me and irritate me because I was high that I couldn't like quite explain it how I normally would be able to explain it. And her uncle kept like going off on like different trails and making it like hyper spiritual or like way too related to aliens or like getting onto different paths about the pyramids in Egypt and stuff. And I normally would be able to be like able to calmly like counter and like explain what it really all is, but I was having a hard time because I was high. So then I got like really anxious because it was bugging me that I couldn't explain it, and I felt like I needed to, and he just kept turning it like into it being about ancient aliens and stuff, and I was like, I just felt kind of like defeated, and it was really weird. And then I kind of got really anxious, and I went to go sit at a couch, and then I was trying to calm down, but it's hard to calm down when you've gotten yourself all worked up from smoking. And I really didn't want to be high anymore. I wanted it to stop because I realized how much it was like stopping me from like talking how I wanted to, I guess. But then, because I was quiet and not talking and just trying to get calm, I had a weird experience. I had a weird experience where like my mind, but it wasn't me, and it wasn't like my mind because I don't think this and I don't agree with this, but it was like thoughts that kept like saying like we're all one, we're all connected, everything's connected, it's all one, and it's all love, and it's all one, and it just kept repeating, and I was like, dude, like this is crazy, this is not me, like I do not think this, I don't actually agree with that. And then my friends finally got me some food, and I ate, and then I drank some water, and then it all stopped, and I was fine, and I was back to just being myself. But yeah, so that ties into all of this because it got really weird. I could not articulate my actual thoughts and beliefs on the antediluvian world. But then also, I would say I had my one and only weird experience where a substance gave me thoughts that were not mine, that I don't agree with, that were deceptive, um, thoughts, probably from unclean spirits. And I will never, ever, ever again have a substance like that ever again in my life because I know what it was, and I don't want any part in that. And I couldn't even counter what I was trying to say to somebody about how I am not into that stuff. It was so weird. So, I don't know, that was a weird rabbit trail story, but that's just one example of what people get into with substances. But yeah, anyway, so unclean spirits can influence and enter people's thoughts when on substances, including marijuana. Um, yeah, some are worse than others, but you don't want to do it at all. Period. Like, and if you have done it before, it's time to stop. It's time to put an end to it. It's time to close that door. And my next video will cover how to do that better. This is kind of just like an introduction to them. But anyway, yeah, the DMT realm. Apparently, there's a lot of trippy stuff, but I have not ever encountered that. Nor do I want to. I don't want it. I want nothing to do with it. Some people do, and I feel bad for them, and I hope that they stop. So anyways, some examples, and I'm using movies and experiences that people have had and stories. So the first category I kind of have grouped together is goblins, gremlins. So that includes, I'm gonna say, Furbies. They're really no different than a gremlin, and I think they did that on purpose. Now, the movie Gremlins, if you get these creatures wet, they literally become like little tormenting creatures that cause chaos and ruin things. And Furbies have a cover of being seemingly innocent, but there's a lot of stories that perhaps unclean spirits work through them because they've said things that have scared people or seem to suggest what Yahweh would never, ever, ever allow, like um, spirits acting like the dead through them and things like that. So Furbies are creepy. They are creepy. I don't know if these stories are true or not, but the fact that they're related to those stories, it makes it weird enough. And Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. Now, yeah, sure, it's just a movie. It's a cutesy movie that takes place in Hawaii, but he has the same features as a gremlin or a goblin, and he came down from space, pretended to be a dog. He was actually bad. He was actually chaotic. And yeah, in the story, he learns how to be good, relatively, and he learns how to be a good family member. But the essence is still there that he is a creature that supposedly came from outer space and resembles a gremlin and causes chaos. And then just other elves, kind of like Dobby from Harry Potter. It fits in that same category of gremlins and goblins, which actually ties into um, aliens. I like Stitch, an alien, but we all know that aliens are actually unclean spirits, right? So, whose parents came from heaven because they were angels, so they're not actually aliens from another planet. They are the offspring of angels who are from the heavens, right? So apparently there's a story of the Hopkinsville Goblin, and I did not read or look into the full story before this video. I just clipped this photo really quick. But I have listened to other things on how whenever there's a supposed alien encounter, well, I would say it's demonic encounter, that oftentimes owls are related to um, what's going on, or they'll remember it as being owls, or the news will even, or whoever's covering it will say, no, you actually saw an owl. um, there's even stories of people who think that they had an encounter with supposed aliens, right? And they remember thoughts being implanted into their head that they saw an owl, they saw an owl, they saw an owl. Also, there's a movie that scared the tar out of me when I was like in 5th grade. I think it's called The Fifth Kind. It's either called The Fifth Kind or The Fourth Kind. It's about a psychiatrist in Alaska, and her patients start having weird phenomena happening to them with owls. And she looks further into it, and then she becomes possessed by what are supposedly aliens, but I'm saying they're not aliens. They're unclean spirits. They're demons. And yeah, I don't know. Lots of weird stuff with owls and unclean spirits, and how people think that they see owls, or they are remembering it as though they saw owls, or it'll be covered up that they saw owls. But I think that they actually somehow saw what is considered to be a goblin or a gremlin, Nephilim spirit, and it somehow gets covered up in their mind or in their subconscious, or by whoever's telling the story that it was an owl. It's very weird. But yeah, so there's that example, and then The time loop, rabbit hole. So in Donnie Darko, there is a rabbit. I have seen the movie Donnie Darko. I've seen it quite a few times. When I was younger though, so I don't really remember all the details right now, but I have seen it. But yeah, there's a rabbit in it, and it's basically a time loop he goes through, but the rabbit's kind of controlling the whole thing. And it's about time travel in a way. But the rabbit, it look, I mean, it's no different than how you would describe how a goblin or a gremlin or a jester looks. It's just, we say it looks like a rabbit, but it could just as well be jester looking with the things on the head, the protrusions coming out. And then we have Alice in Wonderland, of course, with the rabbit, who also puts her through a trippy time loop with a Cheshire cat that he's a trickster. And then we have the Red Queen. She looks like a clown, right? Lots of trippy things going on there. And the rabbit took her through it. And then, which the colors used in Alice in Wonderland, yeah, it's called Wonderland, but yeah, it's because it's trippy and everything is opposites and everything is a trick and everything's chaos and everything's like striped and colorful. And it's, how is that any different from what people see when they're on DMT and they think they're in hyperspace, or they think they're in the simulation, right? Or they're seeing jesters and colors and tricksters and surrealism and masks and things talking to them, and it all seems good. Like in Alice in Wonderland, nothing actually bad seemingly was happening, but it was. It wasn't like something that you want to have happening to you. Being tricked around and going through things that make no sense and trying to make sense of it. Now, this is not what I believe. This is what people who take DMT themselves think. This is not what I think, but this is what some people encounter on these things. They can encounter classic elves, and they're often described as small, humanoid, and impish. So, an imp, which is also like a goblin, right? They can appear bioluminescent or transparent, with some users reporting them wearing hats or engaging in comical behavior. Now, a lot of these unclean spirits wear the weird stocking hat or cap, like gnomes and stuff. Yeah, it's weird. They often communicate telepathically because they're unclean spirits, right? Perform dances or songs and seem to be playful, mischievous, or welcoming. They can show users complex geometric patterns or objects. They're often interpreted as guides or helpers. They can provide insight into the nature of reality, consciousness, or the self. Some believe they embody aspects of the user's mind or subconscious. See, it always comes back to a false consciousness or a false subconscious. Like, we're all one. See, like, I think when that happened to me, that's what they were trying to do, because it was like all one, all love, everything's connected, all one, all love. It was like repeating that, but that's not true. At least not in the way that they want to spin it. Mechanical elves. This is what a lot of people see. These entities have a mechanical or digital nature. They may appear robotic or composed of complex, ever-changing geometric patterns. They are often seen working on complex Tasks are showing users strange, intricate structures. They may impart knowledge or wisdom, right? See, because they're demons. So remember, the word demon means to um, something of supernatural bad um, power that distributes fortunes or knowledge. Many interpret them as architects of reality or as representatives of a higher intelligence. That's not true. Their tasks can be seen as metamorphic for the complexity and interconnectedness of the universe, like the experience that I had on marijuana. Trying to say that everything's connected. It's all connected. It's all one. But that's just not actually how it works. Jester elves appear as jesters, tricksters, or clowns, often with vibrant, fluctuating colors. They engage in nonsensical or paradoxical behavior and speech, sometimes showing the user strange or absurd images and scenes. They can be either playful or unsettling. These entities can symbolize the absurdity or paradoxical nature of existence. Existence is not paradoxical. Yahuwah set things in line. He requites, the wicked. He is the judge. He has his Torah and instruction, and if we don't follow it, we, fall victim to death and judgment. There's nothing paradoxical about it. But to them, if you're outside of Yahusha, if you're outside of his salvation, if you're outside of understanding, keeping Torah, and the higher level of the Melchizedek, you are stuck thinking everything's just paradox and interconnected and just spiritual, whatever, connected to physical. Everything's just random. But it's not all random. But if you're outside of that, you will think it is, because remember how at the beginning I said this is like the land of Nod. You're asleep to Yahweh's ways. So anything that's supernatural at all, you just think, oh wow, it must be supernatural because it's good. But there's things that are supernatural that are not good. So then there's the alien ones, right? Because that's what aliens actually are. They are demons. They are unclean spirits. They're not from another planet. They're not from another galaxy. Earth is it. And these resemble extraterrestrials or have a distinctly non-human, otherworldly appearance. They often communicate through complex symbols or telepathy. They may show users alien landscapes or technologies. These entities can symbolize the vastness and diversity of the universe or consciousness. Interactions with them often lead to feelings of awe or a broader perspective. So, when they see these alien elves or alien entities, and they're just being tricked into thinking everything just goes on forever and consciousness is forever and you don't actually die, which is the whole point of what they're doing. Yahweh said you die because of sin. But these things will say, no, you don't, everything's connected, you don't actually die. It's okay, which is the first lie that was told in the garden with the serpent. He said, did Yahweh really say that you would die? Yes, he did. You will. Unless you're saved by him himself. So, here's even more examples of Nephilim and unclean spirits. You have Christmas and Yule ghost stories. because Christmas actually has nothing to do with Messiah. Um, they do tell ghost stories at Christmas time because that is actually what they're into. Because Christmas is pagan. It's pagan and they like telling ghost stories. And so you have a Christmas Carol where you're a Scrooge if you don't like Christmas, right? You're gonna have the ghost of Christmas past and the ghost of Christmas present and the ghost of Christmas future telling you that you should like Christmas. Or you're a Scrooge. And then there's the Headless Horseman, who is also Jack Skellington, and it all goes into like Sleepy Hollow sort of stuff. And it's called The Nightmare Before Christmas because Christmas is the time when they would tell the ghost stories. And Jack Skellington, yeah, he's over Halloween, but it's really because Christmas time is the time for ghost stories. But yeah, the Sleepy Hollow, I think that the Headless Horseman, I think that also ties into the Green Knight and a few other things. So there's a lot on the Headless Horseman. And then Pinocchio and Fairy Godmother. So this is, when I saw an ad for this Pinocchio, I had to screenshot it because I was in the midst of research for this video. And I saw this fallen angel demon thing. And I was like, oh my goodness, this just confirms all of my research. Yeah, so there's a Pinocchio on Netflix, which I only got an ad for. I will never be watching this. But it has this, I'm going to say fallen angel thing, giving the wooden boy a soul, a borrowed soul. I don't know what that means, but you know, that's, it's all unclean spirits and magic. But even the original story of Pinocchio, there is a fairy godmother, which is, it's all the same thing. So if they depict it this way, they're just being more honest about what it really is. And it's not some beautiful lady with wings coming in. It's an unclean spirit coming in and doing magic. And it's funny because Pinocchio was chaotic. He was unruly. He had no conscience because an unclean spirit gave him a soul. Anyway, then there is Arlecchino, Harlequin, the Joker, and Robin Hood. And they are actually all four related and connected and from each other. In case you didn't know. So, Arlecchino, he was a character who was very jester-like and was inspired by that, like, fractal, colorful, like, trickster, like, ideology. But then he kind of became, like, a romantic over time in his stories. And he's the same thing as Harlequin, and then Harlequin somehow over time became a female character. And then the Joker, so they're the same. Arlecchino became the Joker, and he's also, Arlecchino is also related to Robin Hood, because in his original design, he was like a jester from the woods, wearing something really crazy and trippy. That's something for you to look into in your own time. I could lay it all out, but it would just take way too long for this video. But that ties into Pan and Cernunnos and the Pied Piper. So in the Chronicles of Narnia, which is full of Nephilim on both sides, they try to make it look like there's good ones and bad ones. Well, sorry, they're all the same. And the perfect example is that this um, satyr, he plays a flute when there's a little girl in his cave with him, and I don't know, it's very suggestive that he likes her and that she fell asleep or something. Who knows? That's creepy enough to me. It's the same as the Pied Piper. Peter Pan, he's another Pan that takes children away and wants to keep them young forever. His story is very dark, the origins of it. He's an unclean spirit. He's not actually a boy. And he is a type of Pied Piper. The actual Pied Piper story is creepy. Then you have all the other Pan spinoffs, like Pan's Labyrinth. And I think in one of the first videos I did in this series, I talked a lot about Cernunnos already and Pan and the Labyrinth. So you have to go back and look more at that and how it ties into Saturnalia and Christmas and all of that. And then we also have Beetlejuice. The design for him is really no different than the Joker with how they look and appear and act, because they're based on unclean spirits that look like clowns or jesters. And then this is fascinating if you want to go down this weird trail. In Samurai Jack, it's related to the Powerpuff Girls and made by the same person. But I think Samurai Jack is supposed to be like a parallel universe to the Powerpuff Girls. Or the dad is Samurai Jack or something. But anyway, the storylines kind of interconnect sometimes, where I guess Aku, which is that demon, I haven't watched any of this. This is just from looking into stuff. So Aku, he is a demon. He's like the villain in Samurai Jack. And I guess he was somehow created from black goo, from like a witch ceremony, something weird going on. And then black goo or chemical X is very important to the Powerpuff Girls and their creation. And I'll be getting into that in another video soon on something called homunculus and how evil and bad that is. And they are those. And you also have the tranny devil character, the he, she, they, them, him in Powerpuff Girls, and it's telepathic. It has supernatural powers. It basically can't be beat. It's very maniacal and a trickster. And yeah, so it has all the qualities of a demon. And while we're on the subject of demons and unclean spirits and where they came from and what they do, I wanted to hit on ancestor spirits and saints. So many cultures and people around the world have practices and traditions that involve unclean spirits very often without realizing it. In the next video, we will go further into how to be aware and avoid these things. But for now, let's focus on the imagery and the commonalities of ancestor spirit worship and the commemoration of saints in the Catholic and Orthodox churches. So this is not a stab at Catholics and the Orthodox. This is only an examination of what they do when compared to what the scriptures and even the aforementioned apocryphal texts say. So, it stinks because, like, the term saints, they use that, and they all have their saints, right? And they use them for prayer and other things. But really, biblically speaking, what a real saint is a set apart, a called out one. So a person who has been called out by Yahuwah, basically an Israelite. And yeah, so if you are in Yahusha, you are a saint or a set apart one, a called out one. But they make it like um there's they have like their saints um through their churches, which are not related to being called out ones in covenant Torah as being Israel. Theirs are like all kinds of different people who were part of the Catholic or Orthodoxy, and they commemorate them and they pray through them to God and all kinds of different stuff. And they say it's fine. We're not actually. They say they're ultimately praying to Jesus, but you don't need to pray through anything else to connect with Yahuwah. That's really all I'm trying to say. When you go through anything else, you need to question what really are you going through? So, the reason for us not to make idols, images, speak to the dead, take part in certain holidays and traditions is so that we do not take our hope and worship off of Yahuwah and get seduced by unclean, deceiving spirits. Yahuwah even allows unclean spirits to interact with people once they stop listening to his ways and commandments. Remember, his whole story and redemption plan are tied to his feasts and commandments. So if you're doing anything that has to do with the traditions of men, you're already outside of Yahuwah's covenant. If you like doing what you are doing, you are more than free to do it, but it's ultimately in your best interest not to. Cultures all around the world worship what they call ancestor spirits, who they believe they stem from and can receive knowledge and inspiration from. Remember, that's what the word demon means. Others believe that they can call upon those considered to have been righteous and have passed to help lift their prayers to the Most High and receive help in this life. So that's what they do with the saints. They call upon them even though they're dead, because they want to have their prayers lifted. But the thing is that you can pray directly to Yahuwah. You don't need to have the dead help you. In fact, Yahuwah says he does not want the dead helping you do anything. They are dead. And they argue that, well, they believe that they're alive because they were in Christ. Well, yeah, but if you look at the actual redemption timeline of the feasts overlaid with creation, you know that judgment hasn't happened yet, and you know that we're not in the millennium yet, where all of those who are dead in Messiah are raised up together. So, no, yeah, they're still in Sheol. They're still asleep. They're still not. They're not like there randomly somewhere lifting your prayers up. They're not in heaven yet, because the book of Hebrews says that not even Abraham or any of the patriarchs get to see the new heavens and the new earth apart from us. We all get to see it together at the same time. So, no, you should not be using Abraham or anybody else to lift your prayers to Yahuwah. You can simply just pray to him. You don't need to go through anything else. I don't mean to be a stick in the mud, but Yahuwah sent his Messiah, which is himself, to be our one and only mediator, and has always wanted our direct attention to him. Ask yourself, who am I getting atonement with when I pray or do this practice? At one ment, right? Who are you being one with, when you're in prayer? Who are you at one ment with, in atonement with, right? Are you at one with his set-apart spirit or another spirit? Because if you're praying through anything else besides Yahuwah's set-apart spirit to be at one with him, then you're using another spirit. And I might suggest to you that it's probably from or is the prince of the power of the air, because anytime you pray and it's not directly to Yahuwah through his Holy Spirit, then you're just praying into the ether, and any unclean spirit will definitely want to interact with that. So anyways, here's some ancestor spirit things. We have, I think they call it the sacred clown. Is the one with the horns kind of in the middle. And then this is just an example of a Nephilim saint. It's literally called Harry Mary. And yeah, it's a saint, I think a Catholic saint. And she's a Nephilim, like she's like a Bigfoot. She's covered in hair. And some people use her to pray. You should really think about these things. Then we also have lots of things with clowns and the Catholic Church. I don't even know how to get into all that, but yeah, clown stuff, clown churches, clowns doing stuff through churches. And then you have All Saints Day, which is, I think it's by Halloween, which they also use Halloween for the saints too, which, there you go, that's unclean spirits. Why are you trying to speak to anything, including a saint, knowing what time of year that is? I don't know, like, that's very questionable. And then they also have Mardi Gras, where, so they do their, Lent, right? The Catholic Church, I don't know if the Orthodox Church does Lent or not, I don't know enough, but, Lent is basically where they fast for 40 days, but they choose their fast. But before it, which is really messed up, they have Mardi Gras, or a number of other festivals that are similar, or they have Carnival, where they basically just go all out and party and drink and dress up and basically just like get it all out before they fast. That's not, I'm sorry, but that's not righteous. Like, why would you like ball out in sin right before you have a fast? That's not how fasting is supposed to work. That's very I don't know. I don't know what to call that. It just doesn't seem right to me to have like a big hullabaloo parade festival, literal circus. They have the Catholic Church will do a festival or a circus right before Lent. And that's all tied into the whole idea of the Nephilims are clowns kind of thing. And here's just some more. So, ancestor worship from all over the world, and also just other traditions and customs and clowning. And then you have the Royal Order of the Jesters, where they don't even hide. I think it's a branch of Freemasonry where they don't even hide it. That they're called the Royal Order of Jesters. And they're saying is mirth is king, which has to do with laughter, which has to do with laughter in the human brain being undistinguishable from crying or fear. And it basically is kind of like saying they feed off of laughter and fear, which is what clowns do. Clowns feed off of the energy of laughter and fear. And that's also what Monsters Inc. is all about. Is it doesn't matter. They realize at the end it doesn't matter what their energy source is, as long as it's coming from either laughter or fear. It'll get them the same energy, I guess, or power, right? They're monsters. And then, yeah, just some other things like geishas, clowning. And then you have Katy Perry in the top right corner from her music video E.T. And it's funny because in her lyrics, I think she literally says, could you be the devil? Could you be an angel? And then it's also E.T., extraterrestrial. But they're all the same thing, right? As we're learning through this. And her makeup here, now she has a few different makeup changes in this music video where you could look at it as clown, you could look at it as alien, you could look at it as supernatural, but it's because it's all the same thing. That white face, the red with the white, the frills and patterns, it's all the same. Just different ways that it can look. So now we're just going to do a few New Testament passages. This is the passage with Legion. The demons and the pigs. When Yahusha arrived on the other side, in the region of the Gadarenes, he was met by 2 demon-possessed men coming from the tombs. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. "What do you want with us, Son of God?" they shouted. "Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" In the distance, a large herd of pigs was feeding, so the demons begged Jesus, or Yahusha, "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs." "Go," he told them. So they came out and went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and died in the waters. Those tending the pigs ran off into the town and reported all of this, including the account of the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Yahusha, and when they saw him, they begged him to leave their region, because it probably scared them. Okay, so the days of Jared, Enoch, and Noah. It was dry, there was flooding, famines, the earth was cursed, producing nothing but thorns and thistles. There was angel, human, animal hybridization, wickedness, violence, unawareness of coming judgment. And we also have this passage in Matthew 24:36 through 39 that says, No one knows about the day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so will it be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark, and they were oblivious until the flood came and swept them all away. So will it be at the coming of the Son of Man. So, any number of these things can be occurring again when Yahusha returns. And I might even say all of it. Floods. Not like a world flood again, but remember how there was also a 1/3 of the earth flood? It's possible there will be floods, famines, thorns, thistles, hybridization, wickedness, violence, and people completely oblivious to all of it when he returns. But no fear, because Yahusha will return and things will be made new. And also, this was the altar that Noah made to Yahweh. And remember, it was dry, there were thorns and thistles, famines. But there's something crucial that maybe not a lot of people noticed that I wanted to point out in here. That when Noah built an altar to Yahweh, and taking from every kind of clean animal and clean bird, he offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when Yahweh smelled the pleasing aroma, he said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from his youth. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seedtime and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night, shall never cease." So that was basically a promise to kind of end the thorns and thistles and cursed earth from mankind in Antediluvia, and to make sure that there will be seasons for, as long as this earth remains. So maybe when Yahusha returns, maybe there will still be seasons, because that's part of the promise. But I still think there can be some of the other stuff. But we can definitely say there will always be seed time and harvest, which is good. Cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night. So we can always assure that those things will be happening. But the other stuff, he did say will. It will be like the days of Noah when Yahusha returns. But at least we can count on there being seasons. And this is just a picture I quickly put together of the earth underneath the waters, and how the firmament and the lower waters opened up to flood inside the bowl, right? Because there's a firmament. So it would have opened up to flood. And it would have been Pangea, and it would have split off from all of that breaking up and opening up. So yeah, here's another image where, the floodgates could have opened up. Things could have came up to flood it all up and take out everything. Because remember, if there were giants in a desolate place, this is a picture from a movie called The Green Knight. I have not seen it. I just thought it was a good image to use to show how big and weird it would have been to see these things walking around in a desolate place. Now, I think in this movie they show that they're nice giants, but I don't believe that they were nice. But this is just to give a picture, an idea of them. And also, I'm not sure on the dinosaur thing. I sway back and forth on that all the time, because I think Leviathan and Behemoth were definitely a thing, and they were probably variants of long necks and a plesiosaurus. So maybe those were around back then. And I think maybe the bones of the other stuff might even have been the bones of the giants, right? The monsters. Maybe dinosaurs weren't far off from being the actual Nephilim. But it's hard to say. There could have been both. There could have been just one. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm just thinking of what it may have been like. But what we do know is that it was not lush. It was desolate. We're all told that there were dinosaurs and it was like all like lush and there was water and tropical plants and it was warm and perfect, and that's how they got to be so big, because they were just thriving and perfectly happy until the meteor came. Well, I don't believe that. The earth was not like that. It was the opposite. And there was not a meteor. There was a world flood. So, yeah. And here's some examples of petrified giants and giant trees, which ties into tree portals and columnar basalts. So, petrified giants, so if there was a flood, and if there were dead bodies of giants already because they slayed each other off, then they would have just like petrified in mud, right? And that might be what some mountains are that we see that look like they're like petrified bodies of giants. And even in a recent Taylor Swift video, which I only watched that for the imagery, not because I like her, she is depicted as a giant, a petrified giant in the mountains laying with trees on her. It's also shown in Moana, laying in the same exact position. So I think they do know something, right? Were these dead giants that got petrified through mud when the flood came? I want to say yes. Also in Moana there is a column basalt, which I could not find a picture of. But as they were going up it was a column basalt. But I got a picture of the top of it, and it's the mouth of a demon, right? An unclean spirit. And they jump into it because it's a tree portal of a petrified giant tree stump. And down in there, there's a giant psychedelic crab, but also there's an actual demon down there. Like a legit demon was down there. And they even called it the realm of the monsters. And then more petrified giant tree stumps, which look no different from normal tree stumps. And they even are in hexagonal columns, which is like how a giant plant would have its structure. Hey, and to wrap this up, we're going to do some comparative mythology. So take each comparative mythology, with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying that's what they believe happened to make sense of the past. So in Aztec mythology, the first sun over creation was Tezcatlipoca, who was the jaguar sun. During the age of the jaguar sun, the gods made giants out of ashes. A fight eventually happened between Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl, and Tezcatlipoca was knocked down. In the upset, Tezcatlipoca sent jaguars to devour all of the giants. Later, during the age of the fourth sun, Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl knocked down the fourth sun, causing the sky to open up and flood the earth to lead into the present age, which is believed to be destroyed by massive earthquakes. which actually does line up a little bit with the biblical narrative because earthquakes are said to be prophesied for the end of the day. It's like Yahusha even said, this present age will have, the birth pains will be earthquakes. Part of it will be. In the Genesis and the Epic of Gilgamesh of ancient Babylon, there are accounts of the whole earth being flooded for the earth becoming too noisy. Noise must mean a kind of uproar, just like how noise is similarly used in the Enuma Elish. The supreme god Enlil decides to flood the earth for there being too much noise, and the god Enki confirms to Zui Sudra and / Ubnapishtim, so that's their gods, I guess, that there will be that's their version of Noah, that there will be a large disaster and to build a large boat to survive it. It then flooded for 7 days in their story. I need a sip of water. In the standard scientific model, there is no account of a worldwide flood, although there is a scientific proof of it. Petrified things and whatnot. Rather, there is a multi-tiered catastrophic event that made nearly all prehistoric life on Earth go extinct, which included the dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs were by their own nature giant lizards, right? They were giants in this story. They were wiped out by a combination of a meteor. Meteor caused mega tsunamis, meteor caused earthquakes and volcanoes, and the later blockage of the sun for warmth and food caused by these. So there was it was a multi-tiered event according to the scientific standard. But I don't believe that. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the sun god Ra was worried that mankind would overthrow him. So he sent Hathor to slaughter them. The number of people was so great that their blood flowed into the Nile and then flooded the whole earth. Thoth and 7 other sages were the only 8 humans who survived. While there is no direct story about giants, ancient Egypt was itself ruled by the lineages of the giants that were destroyed in the biblical flood. Modern science even says that one of the rulers was 5 inches taller than the normal man for those days. The Sanheijing of Chinese mythology contains a story of the mother goddess Nua, who is the wife of Fuxi. They are both serpent-like deities with human faces. They are one yet similar, just like the African Edo Huedo. Nua is credited with creating mankind out of yellow clay and rebuilding the Pillar of Heaven. The Pillar of Heaven broke when there was a fight in the heavens amongst the gods. The god Gong Gong purposely banged his head on one of the 4 pillars of heaven, causing it to break and flood the earth. She gathered 5 stones from a riverbed to mend the crack and even cut the legs off of a giant tortoise to replace all 4 pillars. The Roman story, the Metamorphosis, tells of Prometheus' son, Deucalion, who is warned by his father that the Bronze Age of their world would be ending with a great flood. Deucalion builds a small boat for himself, his wife Pyrrha, as well as Pandora, to carry them safely on the floodwaters. Jupiter then floods the earth. Once the flood waters diminished, the couple made humans from the stones on the earth. These humans would have no connection to the gods like the previous ones did. The earth itself sprang forth animals. In the Hindu myth of the Great Flood, it begins with the creator god Manu, who was once washing with water from a jar. A fish in the jar asked for his protection and told Manu of a flood that would one day in the future go across the whole earth. Manu raised the fish until it was one of the largest fish on earth. He released it into the ocean. When the time of the flood drew near, the fish warned Manu to build a ship. Manu was the only one who boarded the ship to survive, and the fish towed his ship to the top of a mountain. The fish was a form of the god Vishnu. In Surahs 71 and 11 of the Quran, the story of a man named Nuh who survived the worldwide flood that Allah sent to destroy all people. The reason is because they listened to other gods besides Allah. Allah directly instructed Nuh to build an ark to survive the flood. Okay, and now we're back to Genesis chapter 6 through 9 tells the story of how there were Nephilim, fallen ones, that slept with the daughters of men and ruled over the earth. There was much violence and wickedness across the earth on account of the Nephilim and the sinful hearts of mankind. Yahuwah regretted making mankind because of how corrupt they had become. He even had to destroy the animals of creation from how they were corrupted. The Book of Enoch, the Book of Yasher, and the Book of the Giants are apocryphal books that account and give further details on this event. Noah was the only man pure in his generations or genes, and righteous in his ways. Noah was directly instructed by Yahuwah to build an ark large enough to house 2 pairs of every biblical unclean animal and 7 pairs of every biblical clean animal, as well as his direct family. The earth flooded 150 days, with 40 of those days being a downpour of rain. The ark rested on Mount Ararat in the biblical 7th month, and when the 2nd month came back around, the earth was dry, because it follows in line with his seasons. Yeah, so even the flood, Yahuwah made it follow in line with his seasons, which makes his story even more powerful. All the details tie in so much better. And then we have the African story. I think it's West African. Coiled beneath the earth, Edo Huedo had to be fed iron bars supplied by red monkeys that lived in the sea. If the monkeys were unable to provide Edo Huedo with enough iron to eat, Edo Huedo would have to consume its own tail, like the Ouroboros, causing the surface of the earth being held up by its coils to be fully submerged in the ocean beneath and to begin anew. And that is all that I have for this video. Stay tuned for the next one, where I will be going over how to avoid demonic oppression and exploitation, and how to stand firm in the set-apart spirit, which is the Holy Spirit, and be more actionable in how we think, so that we can avoid unclean spirits and in all of our ways, in all that we do, because it is possible. It is possible to never be bothered or affected by them. It's possible to just have a life where you only have Yahuwah leading it with his set-apart spirit. So that's what the next video will cover, along with some other things. And I still will not be done with the series even after that. It's starting to become quite the project, but I will go more over a lot of these topics in a few more future videos. I'll be covering, in the next one, I'll cover some stuff of after the flood with Ham, Shem, and Japheth. I'll be covering a little bit of that, along with how to avoid unclean spirits. And then in another video, I'll be going over a little bit more on covenant, just to cover covenant a little bit further, and Abraham, since I'm kind of going in order of the story from Adam and Eve and up, so we'll get to Abraham soon and go more over covenant, and then I will trail off from there. I'll talk about the Tower of Babel, and I'll even be able to talk about the counterfeit temple there, and talk more about Mystery Babylon, and I'll even get into alchemy, and I'll even get into the alien deception, which understanding unclean spirits is a prerequisite for that. And then I will also have a video on the Aleph Tav, which is Yahusha versus the false ideology of collective consciousness, which this video is also a preliminary for. So it's all going to be a crazy ride as I finish up this series, hopefully into the fall. But thank you so much for watching. Subscribe and like this video and comment if you would like. I would really appreciate it. Just so that it's really just for me, so that I know that people are watching and appreciate what they're learning. But in the meantime, may Yahuwah watch over you and protect you, and you just pray over the information gathered from here and take it forward, and may Yahusha be with you in his mighty name. Amen, and I'll see you in the next one.